See if
This
that little,
conference will now be recorded.
there she is. I don't know if you guys heard that. So I'd like to call the Invest in Willmar board meeting to order for Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. And we'll start out with the roll call. Sawatsky,
Yes, hi.
Hammond.
Here. Sorry.
I believe John Cole is gone, so I'll put him as a no. Anderson.
Here.
Poe.
Here.
Councilmember Muskie. Councilmember Nelson.
Matt, this is Janelle. She called and said she's on another conference call and she will arrive later unless we need her right away.
Okay, thank you. So I have five of the 8 board members are present, including myself, with Councilmember Muskie and Councilmember Nelson. And I know John was actually going to have had a conflict. One thing I wanted to mention from last meeting, I don't know if this was happening to other people, but many people were freezing up. And I don't know if that was happening when I was speaking. So I'm going to try to look straight into the camera and not move. And so when Tony gets a little wild and crazy and starts flapping his hands, he started to actually freeze up and I wasn't hearing what he was saying. So if anybody is having issues, let me know. Maybe just, I don't know, put your hand up or something. So I think what happens is when you're moving around or you're not looking straight at the camera, maybe you're breaking up. So I'm just taking a guess. So item number 2 on the, go ahead,
Matt,
Marv.
this is Marv. I'm in attendance also. I'm not a voting member, but I'm a member of the committee.
Oh, sorry. And then thank you for mentioning that. And then staff members I know are here as well. And again, if I did not acknowledge them and should have, my apologies. Item number 2 on the agenda. Well, first off, if I could start off with, could I get any additions or deletions to the agenda that you guys have? If I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved.
Second.
Dennis made the motion, Tony seconded. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion carries as far as the agenda goes. Second item on the agenda, I'm going to move to approve the meeting minutes from 8/12/2020. If I could get a motion.
Move.
Second.
I got a motion from Sawatsky, a second from Ammon. Any discussion on the minutes from 8/12/2020? All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Item number 3 on the agenda, financial update. Is anybody specifically assigned to this item number 3, financial update on the local option sales tax, and then a
Yes,
review?
Staff is supposed to respond to that, please. But I don't see staff on this call. Who's caller? Who's CO?
Well, again, that could be a
Oh,
general
that's
public.
Rachel. That's Rachel. Okay. But staff was supposed to, is our city administrator around? Steve Okins around?
The only
Janelle,
staff member that's on the call is Rob and Janelle.
Okay. Marv, are you comfortable with this topic or no? A general from the, I think we're looking for just a general review or update from maybe the council meeting. I think that's what that's for.
Yeah, I'm not sure who had prepared the agenda or put it together. I know Rob was on the call last night as well, but I can give you a basic overview. All four of the motions did pass. Motions were made to use bonding for up to $5 million, and that bonding could either be done through bond council or the dollars could be placed locally, either way. There was a motion that allowed the dollars to be directed by staff on how they would be spent, and up to $3 million for Robbins Island and up to $2 million for Swanson Field. Councilmember Meske brought up the point that the Invest in Willmar Committee had not approved the entire amount because there was objection to the shelters by a couple council members. And so that was not forwarded. They were waiting for direction from this board before that gets moved forward. My understanding is that the ability to re-engage the architects in Marcus Construction as a construction manager was approved as well. And on oh, there's Brian. Brian's here now. Maybe you can let Brian give the update. Or do you want me to continue, Brian?
Just go ahead. Keep going. You're doing an excellent job.
So on the event center, it passed with a 6-1 vote with one member dissenting. And there was conversation in regards to what was asked for by the public and then what is being forwarded by the architects. And so, but all four of the motions did pass, and that's a very favorable thing. Brian gave an update on the financials, and I believe all of you have received those financials as well. Last month of August, without the additional dollars coming in, we're at $201,000 collected on revenues for local option sales tax. And then there is a small amount, which the finance director said can be anywhere from a couple $1,000s up to $20,000 if you take a look at the past reports. So this was all very favorable news, and commend staff for getting that report out to everybody as quickly as they did. So the council is excited to see what can move forward. The administrator felt that we could feel fairly comfortable with expending up to $20 million and then still have that 10 million just until we get some more traction and some more analytical data. So I thought the report was very favorable, and I think the revenues coming in is favorable as well. I could stand for questions, or Brian could as well.
I do have one question or just comment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our board actually is not involved really, I mean, for the most part, other than, as far as financing goes. So like we approved Robbins Island. If the council wanted to scale the funding back, and I believe they did and didn't approve shelters, my thinking there is Rachel and that group, if they wanted to go back to the council, we've already approved their master plan, and so I don't have any reason for them to come back to this board. The same with Swanson, unless people see that differently, but we've approved their plans, and I think that we're trying to stay out of the funding and bonding and financials. We're just getting direction from staff and city council on what they're comfortable with. So at this point, I mean, I'm all interested in updates from Swanson and Robbins, but for the most part, they're through our board, and I see them at this point going back directly to the council if they need to do a few things. That's how I see it. So if Rachel wanted to go back and present shelters because funding looks good, then that would be my direction from my position on the situation. So,
Matt, I think you're partially correct, but I think also in what I heard in the last two meetings of this group, and also at the last two council meetings is that the council really is looking for direction from this group as far as what they want to do. I know we were told last evening that the Robbins Island group has a new plan that they would like to present, and I believe that might be the reason why Rachel's on the call today. But they've got some new ideas for shelters that could come within the parameters that the council set. And I see this as a very favorable thing. I don't see this as a negative at all. I see it as very favorable, but we've got to be careful. I think the council should be careful when recommendations are coming and then that they change the recommendations of this group. So but that's my opinion. But I see everything that happened last night as very favorable.
That sounds good. Yeah, I mean, certainly we're always interested in open updates, and if there's a change, and we want to get, Rachel wants to get on the agenda or Robbins Island, that's great. So, I appreciate the update. Thanks for filling. Anything else, Brian, that you can add? Otherwise, that's item number 3 on the agenda. We were just,
Yeah, I would just comment and alert everybody that after the meeting last night, I just sent off emails to both architectural firms and Marcus Construction to let them know that the council had authorized re-engaging. But I also recommended to the architects that they utilize maybe a priority within each of the projects. You know, like let's take the rec fields. You know, if you got 3 basic projects within one major project, that you create a base project and then throw in your alternates, so that gives the most flexibility for the city council as finances get better. You know, they may do all of the projects, 6 months from now, or, whenever we get to the point of approving, if the financing, the sales tax drops off, they may want to say, well, instead of doing 6, maybe we can only do 5 million on the rec fields. So it's, I don't want to see like an all or nothing, it's 6 million or nothing. I'm recommending that the architects go in saying, let's take a 4 million and then add this project for $1 million and add this project for $1 million for a total of 6. That way, when it comes to the final decision, as Matt just mentioned, on the financing of it, then the council can say, okay, we know what the priority is because you've listed them that way. And we can then say, okay, base plus whatever to get to how much money we have available. And that's, that's what Swanson did. They've got how many, 12 alternates in Swanson. We actually didn't do that with Robbins Island because we ended up just saying, we're going to do all the flat work and we're not even going to do the alternates on the shelters. So what's happening now is now the shelters are coming back. If we had done them as alternates in the beginning, then it would be like, okay, now we know what adding that would be and either approve it or don't approve it. So anyway, that's what I gave to the architects and construction manager, just to get them engaged and also thinking about breaking it up into pieces so we can deal with it as funding becomes available. It might be that we, as recommended by the Invest in Willmar committee, that we do the 6 million and 2 million plus another 4 million, of the event center. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just saying, lay the groundwork so that those decisions can be made 6 months from now after design is done.
well, I think you're on the right track, and I think that's what our priority list was. It's hard to, some projects it's going to be, we're going to want to fund, you can't do half of an event center. So we're going to have to, that's kind of why we did 3 million Robbins Island, 2 Swanson, 6 fields, 2 event center. And then from there, hopefully that's 13. Now that's kind of the cutoff the way I see it. But obviously things look really good, we want to go from there. So the question I have, Brian, is which two architects did you guys re-engage that are going to start working or have the authority to start doing some things?
Widseth and LS. The LS one.
So Widseth is Fields, Tony?
Yes,
Okay. And then LSE is the event center.
correct.
Okay. So, and I think they're close to being done. Maybe that's the next item on the agenda. Anything else on item number 3?
Nope, I don't have anything.
And just a reminder, if you're not talking, if you could put your volume on the mute button. Thank you. Go ahead, Dennis.
We had a point 3B, review laws of Minnesota 2019. Did you mean to skip over that?
No, I did not mean to skip over anything. I don't know who put this item on the agenda. So I guess, Mary, go ahead.
So I don't know if I only received the letter from Steve Okens talking about what the research he had done to talk about the legislative role in the contingencies of the 10%. That's what I just wanted to ask this group, if you had any questions on that, and that he could address those. That's what 3B is.
Okay, so I'm going to share what I believe the 10% contingencies are, and Brian and Marv can correct me if I'm wrong. It's going to be really hard, I think, to get, let's say we've got 3 million for Robbins Island. It's going to be very hard to get exactly $3 million. There's probably going to be a couple $100,000 less or a couple $100,000 short. That's your 10% that you can move around. That's my understanding. I feel like this has gotten overly complicated, unless I'm just not tracking with what this is. But I really think that 10% is, Swanson, your bids are not going to come in exactly at 2 million. It's going to be over or under. And I'm thinking that gives you that option to move some stuff around. Is that, can we keep it that simple, or am I just completely missing it? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, that would be correct. What would be the ultimate would be if we had all the projects designed and ready for bidding at the same time, and it all came in a big bang, and we knew exactly what Swanson, and we knew exactly what the rec fields, and we knew what the event center, all those were, and we found out that the rec fields came in $400,000 less, which is, under the 10%. So we could use that 400,000 somewhere else that went over. Unfortunately, that's not how this is playing out. It's being played out over probably 18 to 24 months. And so as we do the projects, as you see with Robbins Island, we're likely going to be under. So we can use 10% and maybe go to that could go to Swanson, or that could go to another project. So yep, that's how it works. It'd be easier to understand if everything happened at once, but it's not. It's more complicated than that. And so we just have to play this thing out and see what Robbins Island eventually gets to as a total. And if there's some leftover money, that can be used on another project. But the maximum you can pull is 10%.
So let me ask a question on that. Wouldn't it be prudent maybe to get Robbins Island chair on the next meeting and see if we could move? Well, I guess they don't have, if they're going to change things up, I guess they'd have to come back through us and Park and Rec. But if we could get those guys wrapped up, then we'd know if there's another 100,000 left over that they can't use. We could put that towards Swanson. I mean, doesn't that make sense that we'd want to get those guys done?
Yeah, and it's my understanding that they're moving forward with proposal for the shelters, that's coming back. I would anticipate fairly soon. We're not talking 6 months, I don't think. I think we're talking, in the near future, so that we can kind of put that to rest and then move on to the next project and the next one and the next one.
Yeah, I mean, there again, if there's 40,000 or 100,000 that they couldn't do a project with, then let's get it to the next group. So that's what I'll probably direct Rachel, unless anybody, to keep rolling on that, unless anybody has any questions. Marv?
Yeah, I see it a little bit different than what Brian said. You know, when we went to the legislature, this is the first time they ever put the 10% in. And so I talked to the lobbyists from the League of Minnesota Cities, and I also talked to Dave Baker on what the intent was. And they were both very clear that the intent is that the projects can move the money around. But if you have the example used, Swanson, which had $2 million budgeted, you can't take 400,000. You can only take 200,000. So you can only either go up 200,000 or down 200,000. And if it's less than that, that money can't be spent someplace else. So you can't take, let's just take Swanson as an example. You can't take and fund Swanson at 1.6 million and then have 400,000 left, which is the example that was used, because you can only move 200,000 of that. So then 200,000 would remain on the table. And so I do agree with Brian that if all the projects came at the same time, it would be a great thing, because then we could just move the dice around and even it out. But, you know, I think that, you know, and I've spoken negatively towards this 10% numerous times. And I will again today, that this was government overreach, and they meddled in things that they should not have meddled in, because the track record of cities is that they spent the money on the projects that had been identified. So I think that that's advantageous. But so it's going to be a tricky deal when you get to the end. And you know, you were involved in those early conversations of how we came up with the $3 million for Robbins Island. And you know, at the end of the day, we were not thinking that we would have to use all of that, and we'd have the ability to move some of that around. But then when they put that 10% rule in, that took some of that flexibility away from our original conversations with you and Tony and John down at the Goodness that day. So the legislature.
So basically, we need Robbins Island to get to 2.7 million or better. Otherwise, we're leaving money on the table, is what you just said.
Correct.
Okay?
Yep.
Any other questions on that? Okay, let's go to item number 4 on the agenda. I think we're going to get a little bit of an update on the master plan. And Mary, was Brian or Rob going to maybe give us an update on the Civic Center plan?
Actually, go ahead, Rob.
Chair Dawson, Gretchen's on the line, so she can talk a little bit about the Civic Center plan.
Sorry, my apologies. I didn't see Gretchen. Gretchen, do you want to give us a little bit of an update? And I think everybody's seen the emails with the sketches and stuff.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so you've received the email with all of the attachments, so you can see that 95% schematic, you know, design. And I guess honestly, I really would more be open for questions on it. There's nothing really new necessarily. I mean, it's at least from our, you know, last meeting. This is really just so you guys can see kind of that eagle's eye view of where things are placed and where we have really as a committee come to more or less finalizing where we think everything should go, the sizing, all the pieces of the puzzle brought together based on the list that, you know, we were given from the get-go on what was voted on. And so yeah, I guess at this point, now that we've heard, or my understanding is that we are able to move forward with architects from this point, that we would be moving into that design and development stage, I guess they call it, and really looking at more of the nitty-gritty details to get the schematic up to, I guess, the full 100% done, and then also looking at what operational costs would be, and, you know, bringing that forward to city council and stuff like that. So yeah, so I guess I'm open if there's questions or confusion on what you're looking at. I'm happy to try and clarify anything. I know it's a big document. Yeah, Brian, sorry.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I leave the details up to the committees to formulate what the master plan looks like. But eventually the city council, as I understand it, needs to, approve the master plan so that staff can then initiate conversations with the school district to identify the lands needed to be acquired back from the school for this project. So it's kind of a step-by-step thing. So as soon as we get, the whole thing, kind of nailed down, rather than just concept, then we get that approved, and then we can move forward on that aspect of the land side of it. So I don't want to lose track that there's still some discussion that has to be had on that part, and not just get so focused on the project. My needs are I need to go have a discussion with the school superintendent. So as soon as we can nail that down, we can move forward on that.
So Gretchen, I got a question, like how far or how much is left or what on there? I mean, can we approve the master plan or I think it looks fine. I looked at, does anybody have any questions or is it not? Do you know what the architects have? I think it said 5% remaining, or is it just a few like details or? Mary?
Oh, sorry.
I believe what the reason for wanting to look at that master plan was to see how all the pieces of 2 different projects were fitting on that property. And that was a recommendation from the city council member that's on this committee to say, plot it out, show us how it all fits so that we know that it all fits and that we're looking at what the 2 different architecture firms have done in collaboration so that this committee could at least see that it fits there. And like Brian says, so that at what point, I mean, is that all you need right now, that it fits on that piece of land, go? Or, we just hadn't seen a bird's eye view of it necessarily altogether. Rob, would you agree or disagree?
Well, I would agree with what you're saying as far as what we got, as far as the master plan, with everything that the event center committee has put in there, and what the architects have been working on is how close that we can get those turf fields to the civic center to make sure that it still fits into the land space that the high school has. So I know that the high school would like to keep that one softball field that is closest to the high school. It's the varsity field right now. They would like to keep that for Phi Ed purposes wise, and this should all fit in that whole realm from the land, just to make sure that the event center is strictly going to be on city property. So a lot of that is going towards the south, towards the parking lot, and then like the outdoor covered rink would go to the west, and then the curling facility would go off of the event center to the southwest. So nothing would really, as far as the event/rec center would go north per se, that would go into the school land. That would strictly be for the recreation fields. So just want to make sure that we're clear on that. That the event center is strictly going to be on city property. It's the 2 turf fields that to the north would be on the school property. The softball fields would go to the south side of the civic center, that is city property.
So
Thanks,
Gretchen,
Rob. Yeah, I guess that.
go ahead. Go ahead. Back to
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
what do we
I'm
have
glad
left?
Rob clarified that, because what Brian was saying, that conversation with school, that would be somewhat news to me. I'm unaware of what that is or what we would need to do there. So if that's something our committee needs to do, I'd need more information on that, I guess. It was, yeah, like Rob said, I didn't think we had anything really necessarily involved with the school. However, at this point, we of course would want to make sure that, like before, as we've been trying to make connections with the rec field committee, if they've had any changes on their plans, obviously at this point, we'd want to revisit and make sure we're still all on the same page of what that's going to look like. But I guess to your question, Matt, about, yeah, what is this 5% left to do? I think it is just really coming back to the architect and saying, you know, just really approving it all. I think that's my understanding of it. Yes, I think it could be voted on. We as a subcommittee, we're happy with where things are, and so that's kind of where we're at.
Dennis.
First of all, I appreciate seeing the overall plan and it fits together nicely. That said, I'm reluctant to rush into approving the whole overall plan. I mean, we haven't heard from the fields. We don't know if everything is done. And I'd hate to see us lock things in prematurely. I mean, we may be a month out from saying this is it. We've got the architects re-engaged now. I'm not in favor of approving the overall plan tonight.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mary.
I appreciate that, Dennis, and I don't think, I think this was just an overview so that we understood, this committee, that they're moving, and this is a good conversation to have. What's next? Because nobody has approved any of the details. And do we need to approve that plot of land? How can we do that without the information from Brian, the heads of the properties? We got to get their approval, right?
Well, I think probably the next step, is the architect maybe would jump on and do a presentation like your architect did, Mary, and then at that point.
I think Brian, go ahead, Brian.
I guess I would think that now that the architects are engaged, as they're working on the projects themselves, if there's anything needed to finish the master plan, they should iron that out and get it done. Okay? Then as soon as they tell us what that master plan looks like, get it on paper, then I need a description of the land. It may not necessarily needs to be a survey, but a description of some sort that I then can carry forward to talk about acquiring the land for the rec fields. And that's kind of like, just the architects figure it'll fit here. We need 20 feet from your curb line. We need 30 feet from your ball field over here. And just a description of that so that we can then carry that section of it forward. At the same time, they're still working with the committees on the design of the rec fields and the design of the event center. Okay, so this is kind of like a little task out on the side that needs to be accomplished in concept before they finish everything. Which shouldn't be, as Dennis said, it shouldn't be more than, I suspect another month or 2 weeks before they say, okay, here's what we've got for the master plan, and it's finalized. We're confident it'll all work. The city council wanted to see that it all worked. And so to the extent that we can move this thing forward, get it to the council, they put their blessing on it, direct me to go and negotiate with the school on what the land is going to cost. That's just step by step on that aspect of it. That makes sense?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Gretchen.
So I feel like we're kind of talking, well, we are, talking about, the two different subcommittees. And from what I'm hearing from Rob, one has to do with school land and one doesn't. But because they are potentially going to be connected, should I assume that the school land stuff that the rec field needs to figure out, we as the rec and event center would need to wait until that is all done on their end before we can move forward with things? Or I guess just, I'm trying to figure out what is the next step for our committee when we are not on the school land part.
So Gretchen, Tony, myself and John, before we went to the voters, we went and presented to the school board and Dr. Holm about our concept. So they're very well aware of what we're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to accomplish. In fact, I think they're going to benefit. It's going to be a good thing for everyone. So my thinking is we want to try to continue to move forward on the master plan and see what the council thinks about it, and see if everybody's on board. We're not going to prove it today. I didn't intend for that, but I think that's the direction we want to go, because if we don't have the master plan approved, it's going to be hard to finish the event center and the fields projects. So I don't think you need specifically to worry about city versus school, but just be aware of it. And then Brian's going to have to handle that part. So that answer, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Okay, well, I
Yeah,
guess,
Brian,
sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Brian had a comment earlier before you started talking.
Brian, sorry, if I missed somebody, just wave or something.
Yeah, I think you hit the comment that I was going to make. All I need is dimensions, and then I can do my thing. You guys continue to work on your project, and the only thing that the two architects need to work on is, let's say the dome is located, what size is the dome? I don't particularly know that right now at this moment. But if your connecting hallway needed to be 80 feet, and then you put the dome on that, that has dimensional impacts. And so to the extent that they can say, we can comfortably lay in the dome, we can comfortably lay in the hockey arena, all these things fit, that works for me, okay? Give me the dimensions of that area, and the city will then proceed to work with the school. I don't need to know where the footings are. I just need to know that it all fits on the land. And that as we go through this, we also go like, oh, no, we got to go back and get 5 more feet from the school. I don't want to do that. I want to know how much do we need and do it once. So to that extent, that's all I'm looking for.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I guess we can move to, so before Gretchen, in case you jump off, unless anybody objects, I would like to see at the next meeting, and let me know if you're not comfortable with this. I'd like to see at the next meeting, Rachel on the agenda, and then with the shelters, and then the master plan on the agenda with the architect, if they're ready. And if anybody thinks that, and then it would go to us, and it'd have to go to Park and Rec City and whatnot. I mean, if they're not ready, they're not ready, but those would be 2 items potentially for the next agenda. If somebody is not comfortable with that or needs more time to look at things, I guess that's fine too. But that's my opinion. Anybody have any comments on those items? Okay, item number 5 on the agenda. Looks like we've got city council. I think Marv might have touched on this. Does anybody have anything to add to this? Audrey, I don't think Sean's on. But item number 5 is a city council decision for funding. It sounds like everything with our priority list is moving forward. Anything else on item number 5 that might have got picked up when we got through item number 3?
Sorry, Matt. This is Audrey, and I just jumped on the call. I was on a League of Minnesota Cities meeting that I couldn't get off of or wasn't comfortable getting off from. So I'm not sure what was all reviewed with that. I think the 4 resolutions that we did last night are kind of where the city council was at, and I'm assuming that was what was reviewed with that. And so, you know, I think it is moving forward with the architects. It was to see what the next steps can be. It was reviewing the funding for the projects that we're moving forward with this year, and in anticipation of that and looking at that. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I think just there were a couple comments made, and I think just a concern how we move forward, and that we're comfortable that the projects have been reviewed by the committees and that work is continuing as we move forward with that. So other than that, I don't know that I have any other specific comments. That it wasn't a here we go, it was a let's take the next steps to see what we need to do next. So
Sounds good, thank you. Okay, item number 6 on the agenda would be just updates. I don't know that there's a lot from last month, but we'll start with Swanson. Mary?
Yep, so on September 14th is when the bids will be coming in. So we'll be able to find out what kind of project we can start with.
Thank you. Robbins Island, is Rachel on the call or not?
I certainly am.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Rachel.
Perfect, thanks, sorry. Hustle and bustle here of being a chauffeur. I had to pick up my son from cross-country practice, and we made it home in time before I had to talk.
Careful, be careful. You're not driving, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm home. So an update right now, what's going on. I'm sure people have seen some of the advertisements on Facebook and also from the West Central Tribune that Robbins Island Park is now closed. 2 different projects. Robin kind of elaborate on one. One was a separate thing with the shade structures at Robbins Island Playground. I saw that they were taking a little bit longer than what they had hoped to get those installed, and now our project is starting, so people can access the park once they, not at this time. I mean, I think people can do it over here by Hedin Park and walk over if they want to do Frisbee golf, but I think right now they're doing cutting down trees to make way for the new road. So it's just probably a safety issue right now of not having people yet until it is ready. And the hope right now is water line work would start this week. I know we've had some cooler and rainy weather, so I hope they started it this week, if not next week. And that is correct that, you know, with the funding coming in so low for the bids for the new entrance road and parking lots, that we did, to kind of elaborate more on what Brian had said, we did have 2 different alternates on our plan to go forward, but we could have had a rough bid of those alternates if the council would approve that, but they didn't allow us to even kind of get a general idea of what the cost would be just for the 2 shelters within our alternates. So those were taken out of this phase 1. But what we have just projected from getting rough numbers from contractors, and that we are going to be, and Rob can correct me if I'm wrong, we are going to be way under bid of the remaining 1.8. And but we are working on plans and new design and bringing it to the different hierarchies of probably unless we need to bring it to you with any changes to your committee, but Public Works and the Park and Rec Board before City Council too. So our committee, we did have a meeting there a couple months ago out at the island just to kind of have the stakes in place so we can see where the new road was going to be built, and then to go over this new proposal or new ideas for a design of shelters out there. So, so if anyone has any questions on that, or for Rob, that's what's happening right now at the island. And like Brian said too, we hope to get those plans to you soon. And Rob and I have been working on that. I'll have to talk with Rob after the meeting to see if we can get them ready by next month.
So the question I have, Rachel, do you know with the professional fees and with the road construction, what dollar amount you're at right now with Robbins Island?
Yep, just for this phase one that was approved by council, we are just under 1.2. I think it's, Rob can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're at 1.180, 1,180,000. Is that correct, Rob?
Well, it's close. When you get the soft cost in, architectural fees and testing, we're probably closer to that 1.5.
Oh, okay.
So we just got that update from Jared this afternoon.
Okay.
Tony, go ahead.
Rachel and all, I'd put a plug in for kayaks, canoes, and longboards and life jackets for that new shelter, and maybe some snowshoes for the winter. I think that would be great if we could use that as a kind of a rental center, or citizens could check stuff out and use that beach area in the summer, and then the trails in the winter.
And that's part of our reconfiguration a little bit, is making the shelter, I think it's shelter number 1, and Rob can correct me, that's down by the beach. We would expand that a little bit, make it a little bit bigger in the back end, where it could be essentially a storage area for now, a rental space for whoever, if they rent it out to a business, or if the city decides that's going to be a part of their venture. But yes, that is something that we thought of as a committee, is with this extra funding, we can elaborate a little bit on a shelter down by the beach.
So basically, Rachel, you're at ballpark 1.5. So you need, I mean, you have 1.7 million, and you're still going to be $300,000 short, and that'd be 10%. We could take that 300, do another project. So do you have any idea where we're going to spend 1.2 million at Robbins Island?
Exactly. Rob could kind of help me out. We could Rob, do you know our shelters, before we had started tweaking them, the 2 shelters, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't they under 500,000, Rob?
Yeah, we had Ram Construction kind of give us a ballpark idea about what a shelter would be like, with the dimensions and the materials that we would want to have in there. So they gave us a quote basically of $250,000 per shelter. There could be some upgrades with that, is, you know, if we want to spray foam it and those type of things. So we roughly thought, you know, $300,000 a piece would get us 2 shelters.
Okay, so at 600 then, if we were at 300. And then have we talked more about, are they aware of our talks with Gurry?
Well, we can bring it up now. So,
okay.
So the Gurry shelter, the group is looking at is if where the road is at, and if we flip Gurry's entrance and put it towards the playground so it's facing north, basically it would be redoing Gurry from the inside and the outside, and redoing some of the flat work as far as the concrete goes, that it would actually be a display for people to have birthday parties, gatherings, lunches, all that type of stuff while the kids are playing in the playground. So that was one idea with the Gurry and
yeah,
Jason.
so that would be in addition to the 2 shelters we were talking about. So still, I think we're gonna, with adding that component, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but that's still probably gonna be under 1.2.
Yes, from what the estimate that we got kind of for material wise, that Kurt Hein got for us. It was roughly around that $90,000 mark for material to redo that shelter. We still have to get the labor or whatever for it, but just so that we have a rough idea about where we're sitting at money wise.
So again, just so everybody knows, if you guys spend 1.2, you're still $300,000 short of your 3 million. So obviously we want to be smart, but I mean, it's a really good problem to have, but I think that you guys maybe need to talk to Steve and Brian off this call and come back to us with a presentation. Go ahead, Audrey.
Just, I'm just curious if there is an opportunity here to look at some enhanced walkways or trails with some of that money. That was some of the things that were in the original plan, and also we weren't able to do with the Four Seasons shelter, but with the change in how the island will be used, I just wondered if there was any conversations going on about enhancing additional walkways or trails along the other side of the island. Like both ways. I think there were good plans that were there. And so much like Dr. Ammon asking about winter use, I'm wondering if there isn't some other options for some trails that could be done out there too.
Sure, especially with the grant money that the city had received. I think they took the trail, wasn't it, along the lake part out. So that could be an option to be added in with ours, plus something on the north side of or north and east side of the island or of the circle too. I know with running the loop a lot and running the trails between Hedin and Robbins, there are some areas that could get updated on there on the way to the bridge. There's some low-lying areas that gets filled up with lots of water and very used and cracked up. So I'm not sure if that would be an option.
One other thing, Rachel, I was just going to mention is one of the challenges with that beach over there is, and so if you guys if your subcommittee meets and you're looking for creative ways to, I guess, enhance the area, one of the challenges has always been is that the water is stagnant over there when it gets hot in the summer and it sits. So I don't even know, I don't know what it would take to put a little bit of a beach over somewhere off over towards that road where the water comes in and out. But I mean, if that, like I said, I don't know if that would ever come into play or be looked at. Maybe it's a conversation at your subcommittee meeting, just something to throw out there, because that area, the water sits there and there's no flow in there. That's where you have the issues. So if there was ever a way to put some type of a beach over on that, to the west and to the north around that little island or somewhere out in that area where there's water flow, just something to think about, just an idea. It maybe is not have any merit, but something to talk about. Go ahead, Marv.
To kind of dovetail on what Councilmember Nelson had stated, you've got your contractors out there now, and there's a huge mobilization cost. If you wanted to do some of those changes, now would be the time to do that when they have their equipment there, versus having to have them remobilize and shut down the park again. If we're talking about just a little bit of work, we should get that to Rachel. You should get that to Brian so we can get that to staff, so they could put it in on a change order. That's the desire of this committee, because a big cost is mobilization, particularly with that heavy equipment, and we really don't want that heavy equipment going back in over the top of the stuff they just done. I wouldn't think. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's why we thought we had all of the flat work that we wanted done. The other thing that we have to remember is that the amphitheater was something that was talked about as well, and that's been taken out of all the conversations. But that's something also that was talked about at the mayor's task force, and also, there were some conversations back with, Willmar Foundation on that.
Are you talking about more, Marv, like excuse me, the smaller one that would be nestled kind of in the hill along the road over
Correct.
where the
Yep.
new road would be.
Over on the west side. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Well, Rachel, you've done an awesome job. You've put in hundreds of hours into that park from like other people on this call. So thanks for all your great work. Obviously, if you can rally the people, and you've got some things that you want to bring back to us, we could always call a meeting, and get the ball rolling. Like Marv said, Marv just made a great point. I mean, the equipment's out there. It's only going to be more expensive to go back next spring. Go ahead, Mary. You're on mute, Mary.
Okay, there's a comment in the chat, water fountain in the beach area to keep the geese away.
Water fountain.
All right, thank you. Audrey?
The water fountain's a great idea, but there's also some environmental things that were looked at, I think have been for years along the shoreline. Those are, I think, ideas that would enhance the beach too, to enhance the water quality too, so.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Stay in touch on
Mhm.
on your developments. If we can get
I
you on the
will.
next agenda on the next meeting, or if you wanted to call for one in a couple weeks, let us know, okay?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much. Appreciate everyone's support.
Thank you. The next couple items, community center, I'm just gonna assume there's no update on the community center. They've been shut down. I'm gonna assume there's no update on storm, but please flag me if, Mary. You're on mute, Mary.
Julie Asmus is on, so I think let's give her the opportunity to decline or to talk about the community center.
Julie, community center.
Nothing new. Move
Thank
on.
you. Is anybody on for storm? Okay, I'm gonna pass on storm, and then I'm gonna go to rec fields, which would be Tony or John. Do you want to give an update?
Yeah, I'll just respond. I mean, Gretchen had a great question. We have seen the master plan, so we're very comfortable with how that looks on the kind of combined city school property where the fields would lay out. And we're just excited with the council's actions yesterday that we can move forward and get some costs, and we have our lists of main projects and priorities, and hopefully we'll come back to you soon with what this is going to cost and what it's going to look like.
So Tony, are you thinking that you want Gretchen to come back with the architect and present a master plan to our group next month? Is that something that you are ready for? Because it affects your group, obviously.
I don't think that's necessary. I think the architects were conversing before, and I think they know, and I think they're still working together, or they will be working together now again, just to finalize how, if we're going to connect or not. And that'll depend on what the budget cost to everything will be.
Okay. Event center, Gretchen, obviously, go ahead. I think you guys probably are on hold still, but go ahead if you have anything.
Yeah, nope, nothing that we didn't already talk about.
Okay, thank you. Well, anything else? Otherwise, our next meeting, October 14th on Wednesday, unless somebody calls for something before. Mary, can you think of anything between now and then that, again, if Rachel and Robbins Island comes back, that'd be great. Do we want to try to see anything from anybody specific? Does anybody have any specific requests for the agenda next month? Audrey.
I think it would be great to get some information, and I think we are from Robbins Island. Also from the event center, there was a concern expressed at the council meeting that group has not met, and also the number of times. And so I would hope that group will be meeting and kind of getting together to help us, to know where they're at with that as we move forward. So that's my only comment.
Yeah, I think probably most groups, if the architects have been shut down, they probably haven't been meeting, but I don't know that there's a lot left if there's only 5% left with LSC. It looks like they're pretty much wrapping up, but go ahead, Audrey.
No, just a concern that the group was engaged and had met. I'm assuming that architectural plan needs to be reviewed. And so I guess I'm hoping that group's going to meet to bring back a united, here's where we're at, here's what we want to do. So with that, I appreciate that the drawings were done, but there were concerns that they did not meet during some of that process. So I'm just asking for that group to meet.
Sorry, are you talking about Rec and Event Center subcommittee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Audrey. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was brought up by a council member that he was actually citing the number of times that they've met, and I know that that's been a concern. And I just would like to see us take on a positive approach to going forward with it, and just asking for the group to meet, to review, to bring it forward, that there is a group that has a plan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've met up until we were told we can't go any further at this point, at which point there was no reason to meet. So yeah, no, we're all in it.
Marv.
Yeah, the comment that was made was that there was a disconnect between what the architect was being told and bringing back and what was actually being done. And I think I mean, I heard those conversations 6 months ago, but I haven't heard that recently. So I think that things are back on track. I think it might have been a comment, maybe out of some frustration. And the motion passed on a 6-1 vote, as I reported earlier. And I think that the committee's doing great work, and we need to continue to encourage our committees and not stand in their way.
I just need to follow up with that. That my words were to encourage them to meet, to bring it, because to fix the divide, and if there is one, and to just clarify that the group is bringing forward what I've talked to different committee members. So just asking for the committee to meet and bring forth a united proposal.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I think we all got the points, and I was on that committee, and it's an incredibly challenging, complicated project that obviously there's a lot going on there. So we'll just, I think at this point, with I'm trying to think of what's the next meeting, and I'm thinking maybe Robbins Island, and maybe the architect from LSC, if we're going to put them back on the payroll, that they come back in and present an update on a master plan or where they're at with things. Because okay, so Brian, just let's clarify what funding is approved. I'm sorry I didn't see the council meeting Tuesday night. What funding is right now are we okay with starting to work with? I have a guess, but why don't you clarify?
All right, if you take out, let's just say take out stormwater and the community center, the numbers that were proposed to the city council was 3 million Robbins Island, 2 million Swanson, 6 million recreation fields, and 10 million. And that should equal, if I'm not mistaken, like 21 million. Does that sound right? Okay, so overall, that looks doable based on our financial projections. Okay, but as I told you earlier, that I'm asking the architects to and the committees basically to set a base project, your number one priority, and then maybe number 2 and number 3. Because as we go further down the road here in the decision-making process, maybe we only authorize 19 million. But in either case, what I see occurring is that the event center would likely get funded with more money than the Invest in Willmar's original $2 million recommendation. I see that higher. I mean, it could be 6 million, it could be whatever.
Okay.
So in the big picture, I think the council's comfortable, in that 21 million area, given the current sales tax revenue. And if you trickle down backwards, that means the event center can do more of its projects than what you had recommended.
Okay, so I'm gonna recap what you said. 3 million for Robbins, 2 million for Swanson, 6 million for Fields, and we just kind of put in 2 million for events, but your center, just because 2 of the 10, but you're saying that we could probably go more than the 2. So, because basically Robbins Island's kind of done for the most part, not done, but 2 million on the Swanson, and then the 6 Fields, then the 2 on the event center. You're thinking that we want to expand and maybe go to 10 with the Fields, because that would get us to 23 million. We propose 13 million just because to draw the line somewhere. So you're thinking more that they're more open to going, because that's our priority list, what I just told you, to the council that's been approved through all of us. So you're thinking more the event center is going to get more funding, and we want to start thinking that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the revenue stream, it's enough. I mean, we were projecting 3 months ago that we would have, $20 million of the 30, 2/3 of it, and we talked to our financial analyst and said, in the worst case scenario, we see ourselves getting $10 million, and the city council approved 5, 3 with Robbins Island and 2 with Swanson.
Yep, gotcha.
So if you take the worst case scenario, 10, we can do 5 more, and you still have another 10 million to go, So I'm saying at the present time, I don't think we're going to go backwards in our local option sales tax. In all likelihood, in the next 10 years, you throw inflation in there, the dollars are going to keep growing. And even at 3% kind of a CPI kind of a deal. So I'm saying that I feel comfortable. I think Steve Okens feels comfortable. Our financial analysis looks like there's adequate amount of revenue to fund more than the 2 at the event center, and probably closer to 8, maybe even 9, maybe even the whole 10. I don't know. But that's why I say break it down into some alternates at the end. So as more money looks like it's becoming available, we add them on.
Okay. So just remember, so everybody knows, 3 Robbins, 2 Swanson, 6 for the Fields, then 2 for the event center. That's 13, but then you add 7 million for Storm, so we are at 20. So I'm just saying that the next 8 would go to we can't only build half of the event center. We're going to need, so anyways, it's just something to keep in mind, and we can keep in touch on it, but go ahead, Marv.
Matt, I would suggest that you ask staff to bring the approved documents by the council so that everybody has them, so that the numbers that are being talked about are consistent with what the council has approved. And I think that way you'll be able to move forward more easily. I think we're rehashing the same things over and over again, and we're getting different numbers each time we're rehashing them. So I think if we get it written, what we have approved by the council, at that point, then that's the numbers that you can work off of. So I think that's probably your next step. Otherwise, I know you're worried about the financial side of it, but staff is working on that, and staff's got that worked out.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we're in a good spot here. And like I said, send anything for the agenda that anybody wants addressed to Mary, Janelle, myself. I've got October 14th. And at this point, unless anybody has anything major, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
The motion to adjourn, motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
So Matt,